Hi, this is Bobby Allen of TimelessTempest.com with a wire wrap tutorial on how to make a Celtic knotwork ring. First, I'm going to show you the materials needed. What we're going to need today are 20 and 28 gauge copper wire, along with 24 gauge copper wire, which I have right here. That will be the braid of our ring. Next, we have a ring mandrel, which will give you sizes from about 4 to 16. I have these Xuron needle nose pliers that I like to use. Next are the Nylon Jaw Pliers, which I use to straighten out any unruly wire. Mine are obviously well used. That's okay though, they still work well. And then semi-flush cutters. You can use flush cutters or whatever type of cutters you'd like. I use these little ones. They serve my purpose. I have small hands, so I like these little bitty ones. Next, we have a 2-inch spring clamp. This 2-inch spring clamp I use mainly to rubber tips, make sure that the tips are rubbered, but I use them to hold my wire in place. Here we have 6 pieces of 24 gauge copper wire, which I cut mine at about 6 inches. You don't need that much, but you know, depending on the size ring, you want to definitely accommodate the finger. I have about a 7.5 inch piece of 20 gauge there also. Set your 6 pieces of 24 gauge into the tips of the rubber tipped 2-inch spring clamp and then separate them. You want 3 groups of 2 here. These 3 groups of 2 will be what makes up your braid. And now we're going to start the braid. What we're going to do when we start the braid is we're just going to bring the left group over the middle and then behind the right group, and bring the right group over the middle, left group over the middle, and just back and forth, left group over the middle, right group over the middle. I'm having a little bit of trouble holding on to my spring clamp. And bring the right group over the middle. Then once again, we're going to bring the left group over the middle. And another time, the right group over the middle. Be sure to bend these in well enough to make your nodes real nice. You know, you want it to look as uniform as possible, so be sure to bring them in real far. I like to. It gives the nice round node instead of a flatter node. Bring left over the middle and the right over the middle. And then you want to just continue that until you get about the size that you want. I have a small finger. My finger is about a 6, so I won't need as much. This is what it will look like when it's finished. I will be cutting a decent portion of that off to accommodate my own finger, but that's what you'll want. You want it to look nice and uniform all the way through. And that will sit in the very middle of your braid. Of your ring. Bring out your ring mandrel and grab the 20 gauge wire. Then you're going to set it. I start on the one right above the size that I want, and I just wrap it around. You want to wrap it around to where there are 3 in the back, 3 wires crossing in the back, or sitting next to each other in the back, and then 2 in front. And then I will take take it up to the 6 and make it a little smaller. A little smaller. When I start, I always start it just a little bit bigger because it eventually, when I close it up, it will fit the 6 perfect. Then, like I said, 3 in the back, 2 in the front. Right there, in between that, that's where your braid's going to sit. Your braid's going to sit real nice right in between those 2 base wires, the frame of your ring. And then, once you get it about the size you want to trim the edges. Trim them to have a little left over, to play with, because that's how we're going to make this a solid band. That one's a little too long. I'm going to cut it a little shorter. Then next, what we're going to do is we're going to stick these ends right underneath the middle solid bar that's there. Take it off of your ring mandrel and then just tuck it right up underneath. You don't want the 2 cut ends to cross, but you do want them to both go underneath of this band, because that's how we will secure it and make it a solid band. See, both of my ends are up under the middle, but they are not crossing. And then you want to put it back on your ring mandrel. I take mine on and off of my ring mandrel a lot because sometimes the ring mandrel doesn't accommodate for my fingers, and then if I don't use my ring mandrel, the size won't come out right. So you have to use your ring mandrel often. Take your fingers, or as I'm using my needle nose, you can use chain nose if you'd like, whatever pliers you have, and you want to bend the top one up and around that middle, and the bottom one down and around that middle. Just bend them up and then trim the extra off. Trimming the excess off will make sure that there isn't too much over the other side of the band, because it'll poke you then. You don't want that. Use your pliers to just kind of crush that down around the middle. Make sure that it's on there nice and secure. Run your finger over the top of it. You don't want any sharpness anywhere. We're going to run our finger over this a lot. Trim the bottom, and then also crush it down with your pliers. Excuse my autofocus. Yes. Leave it on your ring mandrel for this part, because I've noticed that if I try to take it off and eyeball it, it does not come out correctly. You want to use your ring mandrel for this part specifically. And run your finger along it, crush it down, make it nice. See? Now that's the beginning of the bow tie setting that I use. Now that it's secure, you can take it off of your ring mandrel to just push the ends in neatly. Run your finger on them, make sure that there's no catching edges. Those catching edges will be very uncomfortable if you don't take care of them, so you want to check for those a lot. Excuse me. Make sure that there's plenty of room in the front of your 2 frame wires there. And then with the back, what we're going to do is we're going to push those together. We're going to push them together to where they sit right together real neatly. Just use your fingers. That completes this little bow tie setting, which now that it's secure, it won't bother your finger. And you'd think that the little ball would be uncomfortable, but it's really not. It's an everyday wearer for me. Now, stick it back on your ring mandrel, right about where you want it. Then grab your braid and set your braid. You want to make sure that it goes end to end as close as you can get it comfortably to sit, and just bend it around the ring mandrel to the size that you want. Like I said, I knew I was going to trim a good amount of that off, but that's okay. It's a lot easier to take off than it is to give back. So of course you want to make more, you want to accommodate for more room if needed. Always cut bigger, not shorter. Now there's my cut ends. We're going to separate those, pulling one set to one side and two sets to the other side, just because that's the way that it naturally sets when it's done, when the braid is finished. It sits that way, and it keeps it closed. The braid can't unravel that way. Now, set it right where you want it, where you want the ends. Put it back on your ring mandrel, of course. Give it a good look and size up where it is that you want these to set, because that's it's going to be important. You want the ends to go as close as possible, but not to where it's going to come up over the edges. Then we're going to take these ends and we're just going to tuck them up underneath the frame wires. Do that with all three. Just pull them under as best you can. You don't have to use your pliers. You can use your fingers to do this also. I use my pliers usually because my fingers either won't fit, or just because I feel like sometimes I get a neater product out of the tightness that I get from the pliers. And set those where you want them, and then we're gonna go to the other side and do the same thing, pushing these around the sides of the frame, one on one side, two on the other. Just push them down where they're comfortable. You want it to look natural. Try for an organic feel, just something that feels like it could have grown there. That's really the idea. Now that those are where we want them, you want to trim these off real short. You want them short enough to where you can just tuck them right up underneath the frame wire, almost like you're gonna coil around it, but you're not. You're just curling it around there and securing it. I like cutting quite a bit off. You want it to go around there to where it's not gonna have any extra to catch on something and pull out of place. So you want to cut plenty of it off. Make sure it can still go completely around the frame wire though, like I just secured that. And we'll secure them all like that. Oh, excuse me. Trim the ends real short, really close, and then just tuck it right up and around the frame wire. Yeah, run your finger on it as much as possible. Make sure that it's not catching. And we're going to do that for all of them. And this is what it should look like. All of the ends tucked in nice and neat. No edges going over on the other side, just tucked over, nice and secure. If you kept them short enough, then they will not get in the way of clothing or anything else that they could possibly catch on. I know some people like to wear rings on necklaces, like their pendants. It would not catch on a necklace or anything like that. Make sure that the ends of your braid are coming as close as you can get them with them sitting neatly. And stick it back on your ring mandrel to make sure that the size is correct, and mine is. It's a 6. It spins freely. It doesn't go over the edge to the 7. Now we're going to start attaching the mounts, which I like to bend these frames just a little bit if you need to accommodate the ends. Make sure that it fits neatly. Now, grab your 28 gauge and pull a decent length off. I like to use maybe about 7 to 10 inches. Then we're going to take one end and put it through the very first node on the bottom. The very first free node on the bottom. That's the node that isn't attached or doesn't have the two coming out of it, the two ends. I'm gonna pull it through there, and then what I like to do is take this short tail and tuck it around the frame wire twice. And I do that just because it's easier for me. If it would be easier for you to wrap around the frame wire twice and then do the node, then that's fine, but I like doing it this way. Put it through in between the braid and the frame wire, pull it down, and then do that one more time. Excuse my autofocus. And bring it around and then tuck it right in between the frame wire and the braid again. Tuck it right in, and then I use my pliers just because they hold on better than I do. Then you'll have two around the frame wire itself and one in the node and around the frame wire together. Now, what we'll do is we'll take the long end and we're going to put it inside the node again on the other side of the coil that's already there, which will make two that are now inside the node and around the bottom. And then what we'll do is we'll just come around the frame wire 2 times. One right there, pull it tight, and then one more, and that finishes the first mount. We will have several mounts on here. You can put mounts in every node if you'd like, on the top and the bottom, like it shows for the tutorial that I have on Etsy, which will be linked in the bottom in the description. Or you can do it every other, like I'll do for this, or I have another ring that I did it every 2. So it's really just up to you what you feel most comfortable with. Here you can see that I'm trimming these ends real short. You need them as short as possible because they will catch if you don't make them nice and short. And take the pliers that you have and just smooth these ends to where they're not catching at all, because they will catch if you don't. You have to really, really smooth those out and check and make sure that they're not going to come into contact with any clothing that may catch. Smooth those out. Run your finger on it, feel it, make sure there's no sharp edges. You can see just the tip of that over the ring. I'm going to continue to smooth it over. And that's the end of the first mount. Use your pliers and smash it down. You don't have to, but I like to. Gives it a nice uniform look. The next one's going to go on the other side, and we'll put it in the first open node on the other side also. What we'll do for the next mounts is we'll skip one node and do it in the third node there. Let's skip a node just for the look, because you can see the stagger that's in the mounts a little bit better. So We'll do it again. We'll insert the tip of the 28 gauge into the node on top. And then we got a small tail and a long tail. Use the small tail to tuck in between the braid and the frame wire once. And then we'll do it one more time with the short tail, curling it back to fit right in between the frame and the braid. Use your pliers, pull it tight. And then with the long tail, once we've got that all straightened out, oh, I bent it, so I'm going to use my pliers and fix it because it's bent out of shape a little bit. That's okay, it can be fixed easily. There we go. Make sure to keep that small tail out of the way because you don't want it to get tucked up underneath, caught up underneath of the mount. I'm going to insert the end of the long tail into the node and wrap around both the node and the frame one more time, which is 2 around the frame alone and then 2 around the node and the frame. And sit nice and neatly together. Keep that short tail out of the way. Make sure that it doesn't get caught up underneath your mount. Then insert the long tail in between the braid and the frame wire and pull it nice and tight to sit against the frame all by itself. And do this once more. And that will complete the second mount. You can see how they're staggered. One's just a little higher than the other, and that was the look we're going for today in this tutorial. Cut your ends nice and short. Trim them as short as you can. I like to try to make mine as short as I can because, like I said, they will definitely get caught on stuff and bend your ring out of shape, and you don't want that. This is a beautiful little ring. You don't want it to become misshapen or lose a mount and maybe pull the braid out of shape. That's not good. Not good. Take your pliers and smooth it out real neat. Run your fingers along it. Make sure that there's no catching. Sharpness and uncomfortability also. You don't want that because then you won't wear it. This is a ring that you want to be able to wear whenever you'd like. Now, you can see we have both of the mounts, the first mounts. The next ones will go in those areas, which is just skipping one node. And then we'll do that all the way around to the very end. Now here, I went off screen and I put the two next mounts in. And you can see I skipped one node, and then the other two are staggered still the same way. The bottom a little closer than the top. And then we're going to put in the next mounts. Run your fingers all over it. Make sure it's nice and smooth. You want it to be comfortable, not to bend it out of shape in any sort of manner. Now here, you can see that I've finished it. All the mounts are in. They're all very even, and they're staggered. You can see the little stagger. And it's finished. Be sure to, once again, last time, check the inside of the ring. Run your finger along the inside and make sure that there's no catching edges. You can see it fits nicely. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please check out my Etsy store, which will be down in the description, and check out any of my other tutorials that I have. Oh, there is one modification that you can do with this ring. If you pull apart these two little nodes of the bow tie, the two parts that you secured in the back, if you pull those apart, you can make this adjustable slightly. If it's just a little too big, you can pull them apart and then place a coil in between there. Just take some 28 gauge and coil it around there a bunch of times just to keep it apart, and it will actually make it an adjustable ring. So that is a slight modification. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please feel free to work along, pause, or download my PDF, which is in my Etsy store. Thank you.